Good evening. Welcome to the program. I'm Kelly Wright, coming to you again from my home in Maryland. And of course, as I've stated all this week, this is due to Governor Larry Hogan shutting down the state, telling residents not to leave their homes unless it's for a medical emergency, to get food, or to do some exercise. And this is all due to COVID-19. This global pandemic, as I've stated so often, is quite disruptive and causing a lot of us to have limited freedoms right now. But that's in the interest of safety and out of the abundance of caution that we do so, which leads me to some opening observations about how deadly this disease is. Allow me to read to you some facts. The global confirmed cases thus far have now reached more than 981,000. The total deaths around the world have now reached more than 49,200. And the recovered people from this coronavirus is now more than 204,000. The US confirmed cases alone right now, more than 226,000. We continue to battle this deadly disease. And in terms of our health economically, a record 6.6 million Americans have filed for unemployment just within this last week alone. And it's very important to understand that while we're going through this, as I've mentioned, while we're socially distancing ourselves from each other, let's not isolate ourselves from each other. Let's reach out and help each other through social media. And now there are various ways to help people by digging into your pockets and donating online to help various concerns. One concern right now is that we can all get back together to help health workers fighting COVID-19 by combating it with the CDC Foundation. That's the Centers for Disease Control Foundation, which has now a $10 million matching fund. So if we can raise that money can go towards buying the personal protective equipment that our health workers so desperately need, because they're on the front lines treating people with this coronavirus, and they are risking their lives daily. And to each and every one of you who are out there on those front lines, we are praying for you. We know what you're going through, but we can't possibly envision or imagine how difficult it is for you and your families. So our prayers to each and every one of you, and hopefully each of us can reach out and help you by donating to your cause. And those are my opening observations. And now here's more. Well, welcome to the Kelly Wright Show. And my first guest is Paris Denard. He is the Senior Communications Advisor for Black Affairs with the RNC. That's the Republican National Committee. He is also an advisor in that capacity with President Trump's campaign. Paris, let me ask you, what's happening on the COVID-19 pandemic front as it relates to the Trump administration and rolling out plans that will help safeguard Americans all the more?
Yeah, Kelly, thanks for having me on your program today. I think it's important for your audience to take heed to the guidelines that the president has rolled out. It's now 30 days to slow the spread. And this is because after the data and modeling that came back from all of the first 15 days to slow the spread with the presidential guidelines, Dr. Fauci and Dr. Birx, and we all come to know and respect for their great expertise in this in this field that they've had for such a long time. The analysis came back that there needed to be a furtherance of the guidance to reduce the curve, flatten the curve, and to identify the hot spots that are going to come up and figure out when the peaks in certain states and certain cities are going to occur. And so they made the determination that they were going to extend the guidelines for social distancing for 30 more days. And it's going to be difficult because of the fact that a lot more testing is going on. Our country is testing like never before and testing more than a lot of other countries. Because of that, the cases are going to go up. So your audience should know that it's actually a good thing for us to identify and know who has the coronavirus, because we're able to then isolate, mitigate, and do the social distancing that we need to do. And so we've seen an increase in the number of tests and people who have it, but we also seen a lot of fatality, a lot of deaths that have occurred in some of the hot spots like New York City, and the increasing efforts that are going on to help mitigate it in New Orleans. And so the administration, another point is working very hard with the private sector. This is one of the best things that our country can do and has done. You see private sector businesses and corporations that are coming out of the woodworks to answer the call to serve and to help by producing and creating face masks and shields and ventilators. And there's even a new testing device by Abbott that came out, new technology, new innovation that allows for an easier test, but also to get the results within minutes. And so we're seeing that the task force that the president put together, experts led by the vice president and with Jared Kushner out of the innovation office, working together to marshal the full force of the American government to handle and to treat and to find solutions for this invisible threat.
And Paris, I want to go back to that, what you were mentioning about Abbott. Their technology, essentially, does that tie into telemedicine? Because we've been hearing a lot about the testing of various ways to utilize telemedicine and developing ways of actually taking the COVID-19 tests via telemedicine through apps, mobile apps, and things of that nature.
Yeah, you've seen a lot of there's been millions of dollars put into telemedicine and opening up the opportunities and reducing the regulations or eliminating the regulations that were there before to prevent telemedicine. And so we've seen that through strategic things that the government has done through the direction of the president. But yes, things like Abbott Labs and putting together this test, and other things like you saw Apple put together a website that people can go to, and it can help identify. And so the more technology that comes from this, the talks of utilizing antibodies to figure out if a person had it or did not have it, or if somebody is immune to it, and the possibility for fast tracking a cure, a vaccine. They're on 3 different trials that are doing right now. And so the FDA is removing barriers to get this to market. And so we're seeing a lot of promise to not only help identify more Americans that may or may not have COVID-19, but also to have the technology involved to reduce the time it takes to figure out if you have it, and to find more solutions and vaccines for it. And so what we're seeing is unprecedented. It's uncertain times for sure, but the government working with the private sector and doctors and scientists all coming together to help the least of these primarily, and then everyone else that are American citizens, is really, really important. And it's a bright light in the time of darkness.
Very well said, Paris. And certainly there's a lot of finger pointing, malicious talk, and criticism on all sides of the spectrum. You've got the political aspects of this. I want to get beyond the noise of criticism.
Sure.
Criticism can go wherever it wants to go, but it doesn't heal a body that has coronavirus.
Right.
So specifically, we know that coronavirus is an equal opportunity destroyer. Right. But I do want to talk about African Americans because of their health disparities. Mm-hmm. And so I want to talk to you on the other side of the break about that, and about some other things that are going on from within the administration as it pertains to the African American community, because that's a community that should not be forgotten or overlooked due to the health disparities that exist there. So stay with me, and we'll come back after the break to drill down on that as well. Plus, I think you have something going on in terms of criminal justice reform. We want to talk about that because, look, business of the government still goes on. The life still goes on for all of us. And we want to talk about those subjects when we return after the break. I'm talking to Paris Dennard, and we'll be back with him in just a moment, right after this. Welcome back to the program. I'm talking to Paris Dennard, who's a senior communications advisor to the RNC, particularly concerning Black affairs. And so, Paris, let's drill down on what we were talking about before. in terms of the health disparities facing African Americans and this huge challenge
Yeah.
that our community has in dealing with coronavirus because of those respiratory disparities that we have. What is the Trump administration doing, along with Democrats and Republicans, to bring some help there?
Kelly, I think it's so important, and I'm glad that you brought this up. And I've said this once before. We've heard the old adage that says when America gets a cold, Black America gets the flu. And what that adage is talking about is the disparity. A lot of times, because of economics primarily and access to quality health care. And so what we have to remember during this time, and what the Trump administration has particularly been mindful of, and especially as you saw with the different regulations and rule changes that are coming out, is that there are still disparities, and there's things that we have to do when you look at the Black community specifically. The guidance that has been given out by the White House when it talks about what we have to do for our senior citizens. Look, my grandmother is 80 years old, and I have been imploring with her, and I know my mother has been trying to convince other family members and friends, you got to stay away. Granny, we know it's tough, we know it's hard, but when you are at a certain age bracket, and if you have compounding issues, underlying issues like heart disease and like respiratory things like just asthma, heavy asthma, and other underlying diseases that hurt the immune system, you are particularly vulnerable. And we know that it's attacking senior citizens. And so we have to abide by these guidelines to make sure that the vulnerable are protected.
Paris, thank you for that information. I want to touch on something else real quickly.
Yeah.
Something that you brought to my attention, and that is the fact that there's a proclamation on Second Chance Month 2020,
Yeah.
basically stating that as Americans, we believe that every person has unbound potential. And I'm actually reading from what the administration has put out pertaining to law and justice. And it is therefore important that we offer former inmates who have served their sentences and learned from their early mistakes the opportunity for redemption through a second chance to become productive members of society. Tell me what that's all about, and how does it relate to African Americans and other people of color in building up a population that's been forgotten, and that would be those who have been incarcerated and coming back out on the streets.
Yeah, that's a very important point, Kelly, and thanks for raising it with your audience. President Trump sent a proclamation designating April as a Second Chances a month. And the thing about this is it highlights the importance of the legislation back in 2018 called the First Step Act, which is essentially criminal justice reform legislation. Under the First Step Act, it reduced penalties and eliminated the three strikes mandatory life sentence provision that a lot of people were impacted in our community. And it really allows for certain low-level drug offenders to petition the courts for review of their sentence. And it allows people to get home after they have gone through necessary training and studies online inside the prison system. Because what we know is recidivism is real, and we want to reduce the amount of people who return. But while they're in prison, while they're in jail, we want them to get the tools they need to come out and be productive citizens. And this disproportionately has impacted the Black community. And so because of the criminal justice reform measured in the First Step Act, we saw thousands come home and continue to because of these new way of looking at those people who have been incarcerated. How does this relate to this new proclamation the president put out about the Second Chance Month? It reminds Americans of the importance of second chances, the importance of hiring these formerly incarcerated people who have paid their debts to society and need to be productive citizens. And so now as we move into this next phase of COVID-19 and get the country back working again, we need to be remembering the least of these and those persons who were formerly incarcerated, because we want them to have a chance as well. Remember those people who came out, because if we can keep them employed, if we can find them a job, if we can help them stay in their home, if we can help them be productive citizens, it's better for the entire system. It's better for family. It's better for community. And so it's really important that we remember these people, keep them in our prayers, especially right now, because they come out of prison thinking that they can have a second chance for a job, and then this hits. So
Right.
it's not just, so we have to keep them lifted up in prayer and encourage them to say, stay in, don't go back to crime, don't go back to drugs, don't go back to alcohol, stay in the fight. Help is on the way. If we can all rally around it together, I listen to what the administration is doing to help Americans. Let's make sure they get the information and they are helped as well, because we're going to get through this and we're going to pull together. And when that happens, all of those persons who came out looking for a second chance, we hope that businesses, especially small businesses, will remember them so that we all can uplift our economy and our communities together.
Very important aspect of American life, and certainly one that we should be concerned with within our own African American community. Paris Denard, Senior Advisor to the RNC, Black Matters, and you've been dealing with that and telling us and informing us. There's a lot more to talk to you about, but we thank you for joining us today on the Kelly Wright Show. And we look forward and welcome you here anytime to keep us up to date and informed of what this administration is doing about problems within the African American community, but also recognizing our significant contributions as well. Certainly, there, as I've stated before, criticism abounds, but the bottom line is we all must work together to overcome this crisis. Paris Denard, thank you.
Thank you, Kelly.
Thanks for watching the Kelly Wright Show. I'm joined again by Dr. Gary Donovitz, who has been talking to us about hormonal therapy and how it can boost our immune system in order to help protect us with this COVID-19 virus. You know, Doc, we've heard the president and Dr. Anthony Fauci and others rolling out the chloroquine and the hydroxychloroquine. How does hormonal therapy help achieve something before you get to that level of using chloroquine?
Well, so if you can boost your immune system and avoid getting the virus, that's your best defense before you have to go on offense. Because once you go on offense and you have the virus, yes, chloroquine and hydroxychloroquine as well as azithromax works, but they come with side effects, and together those side effects are even more. You'll hear about people having heart arrhythmias. You'll hear about people's vision being damaged. There are side effects to chloroquine and hydroxychloroquine, which are known because the drug's been around for a long time. Plus, not everybody can get the drug. There's a shortage, of course, and people are trying to stockpile it. But the drug's not even recommended until you get infected with the virus. So for me, what can you do to avoid getting the virus? And again, the peptide therapy that we talked about yesterday is safe. Both C-Lank and thymosin alpha-1 have almost no side effects. There is adequate supply. It is both great for you and then elderly people that you have in your family, because it may not be you that gets infected. You may just be a carrier, and then you wind up infecting a family member, which would be a horrible thing, because the side effects for them from the virus could be worse. So how could you reduce the respiratory complications for your mother or your grandmother or somebody that you work with that's or in your family that's elderly? This is how you do it. Boost your immune system through hormonal optimization. Use the peptides, both C-Lank and thymosin alpha-1, and get on the right vitamins. High dose of vitamin D, which we have for you, and the zinc. By doing all of that, you protect your respiratory system, you boost your immune system, and you probably save a life.
Absolutely, and the vitamin D is critical, especially for African Americans who don't apparently get enough of it. I don't know why. Is that due to the melanin in our skin, or we don't get outside enough? And of course, everyone's staying indoors here in the Maryland area.
Right. So you're indoors, so you're not getting sun anyway. African Americans have lower vitamin D than Caucasians, but even so, Caucasians don't have a high enough vitamin D level. What the government recommends around 30 is still very low. We would much rather have the vitamin D levels higher. in order to protect your immune system and protect those respiratory cells. So vitamin D, in addition to zinc, is very important. Again, thymosin alpha-1 and C-Lang, both of which are available from us, and we have adequate supplies. And then getting your hormones as well as your thyroid optimized. And thyroid is easy. It's cheap. It's available. It's a pill, and you can easily get optimized. That one thing improves your stem cells, so you make more white blood cells to attack that virus. And it's something not to be forgotten in the therapy.
Doctor, thank you so much. And how can we get in touch with you or with your team of medical professionals?
Practitioners across the United States, all 50 states, 4,500 of them. You can go to biotmedical.com, BIOTE medical.com. Find a provider near you. We can do most of this through teleconference, and then just come get your hormones optimized as a 5-minute procedure in the office, painless, and you'll be well on your way to help reducing the chance of getting this virus. And if you do get it, the side effects from that. And keep in mind, once we optimize your hormones with the pellet therapy, for women, it lasts 3 to 4 months, and for men, 4 to 5 months. So you don't have to keep coming back to the office while you're supposed to be doing social distancing.
Thank you so much. That's good information that we can pass on to our viewers. We appreciate you bringing it to our attention here on the Kelly Wright Show. Dr.
Thanks.
Gary Donovitz with us today. Thank you again, sir.
Have a great day, Kelly. Thank you. Stay safe.
All right, you too. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome back to the program. Joining me now is my guest, Adam Proctor. He is the publisher of the Native Oklahoma magazine. And Adam, it's good to talk to you today. Where might you be today in the beautiful state of Oklahoma?
I am located in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Jinx, Oklahoma is where actually I reside in. It's a suburb of Tulsa.
Yeah, Tulsa's a great city, and all of our great cities and even our rural areas are prepping themselves for this COVID-19 pandemic. As you're aware, Adam, the urban areas like New York, LA, Louisiana, New Orleans, where I'm living in Maryland, and the nation's capital in Virginia, we're all impacted by this COVID-19 pandemic at an alarming rate and receiving the brunt of it in terms of the number of fatalities from it. How are people there in Tulsa and Oklahoma preparing for this, particularly the Native American tribes?
Well, they're still operating as most hospitals would, as far as screening people outdoors, outside of the facility in the parking lot. They're still screening folks that are coming in, and they still don't have the test kits like some hospitals do in Oklahoma already. The hospitals in Oklahoma City or Tulsa just finally got their test kits in this week, but the tribal clinics and the tribal facilities haven't received those yet, but they're still preparing and acting as if taking all the precautions that they need to take care of in screening people as they drive through the parking lot.
Adam, do you think that the Native American tribes are prepared for this? I know within the African American community, there are a lot of health disparities, and some doctors, I had a doctor talking to me yesterday who stated it is time for African American leaders to sound the alarm that this COVID-19 pandemic is serious, and there are precautions we must take in order to safeguard our community, given the health disparities that we do have, particularly respiratory illnesses.
I would say they're doing the best they can with the guidelines and the precautions that are available to them. Being in rural Oklahoma, there are some things that they can take part of, but if it does begin to overwhelm the system in that particular community of Oklahoma, it's really going to take a toll, and it's really going to blow up fast, where they're going to be unprepared and understaffed on taking on the virus cases that are coming in through the door. We're already seeing right now in some of the counties in Oklahoma that are underprepared, and the virus cases are higher in some cases, in some instances, in the last few weeks, were higher than the most populated cities in Oklahoma, and these are rural communities. And so it's really worried about not having the staff or the personnel, the equipment that they need if something like that happens in rural Oklahoma, say like Kay County or Cherokee County, where there's not a lot of population, but at the same time, there's not a lot of equipment, there's not a lot of test kits, there's not a lot of staff to overtake, to see the people and treat the people in those counties. And because of that, you're seeing the cases go higher.
Wow. So Adam, how do you get the word out to these communities? Because in most cases, in those particular rural communities, and given the culture of the lifestyle out there, where you're enjoying nature and you're living off the land and doing other things, how do you get Native Americans prepared for this in those tribal areas?
Well, just like, and some people are shocked about it, that just we have to go by the guidelines from the National Health Center and CDC and what they're preparing and what they're telling us what we need to do. At the same time, because it's rural Oklahoma, there's a lot of country in Oklahoma. And when you go into the communities where there's a lot of hills or a lot of flatlands, there's not a lot of people out there. So there's not a lot of places to go, because a lot of the governor in Oklahoma has shut down the businesses in those counties where the cases are involving. Now you're going to see most towns now are starting to do a curfew, starting at 10 a.m. tonight to 5 or 10 p.m. tonight to 5 a.m. in the morning. That everything is shut down at 10 a.m. or 10 p.m. In those communities, people like to gather together when there's nothing to do.
Yeah.
And because of that, we don't know where they've been and what they're doing. When they do gather, then it has the potential to spread to the other family members in that area. And this is not just for the elders or for non-natives only. We are seeing Native peoples in our communities interacted with the virus. Some are folks my age, in the middle age, between 30 to 45. And some are the elderlies up to above 65. We're seeing council members get infected with viruses. We're seeing people that work in the tribes or work in the health facilities also get contracted with the virus. And they're there on the front lines to help people, to treat people that do come through the door. So because of that, you're going to see, we're expected to see more people in the Native communities help. But because of the helping, it gives them the more risk of contracting the virus while doing that.
Adam, it might be a long season, but certainly we are prepared to endure that, or at least you're preparing the people for that. And obviously the Native Americans have been through so much throughout their history, which is another reason why I wanted to talk to you, because your resilience and your faith is always tested, and it seems that you always overcome. So I thank you for sharing some insights as to what's going on for Native Americans throughout Oklahoma. Certainly keep us updated. Know that our prayers are with you. And I can't wait to visit Tulsa again, and all of the beautiful people out there, and especially in Native American country. Thank you.
Yeah, glad to be a part of this. Thank you.
Adam, God bless you, man. Thank you.
Bless you.
Back now to the Kelly Wright Show. We thank you for staying with us. Joining me once again is Dr. Ryan Maersk. He is head of the Maersk Institute, which is a plastic surgery institute there in Miami, Florida. And he has quite a vast business. And there is a business end to healthcare. There is a business end to practicing medicine. And quite a few doctors, Doc, are going to be impacted because of this COVID-19 pandemic. Explain how difficult it is for doctors like yourself and other practitioners to get out and conduct their business, and how would that affect the American people?
Well, with like most businesses, we can't just flip a switch and turn off our overhead, and our overhead is quite extensive. The challenge really is for private practice plastic surgeons that do majority elective and aesthetic work. the switch is off. We cannot work. So there's very few ways, if any, for most of us to generate revenue. And this could continue for anywhere from 1 to 3 to 6 months. We just don't know right now. So a lot of big successful practices are going to have a hard time surviving for even a 1 month in the situation. We're going to see the landscape completely change. Right now, in an effort to preserve resources, and 2, encourage people to minimize interpersonal contact, we're just not conducting business. So everything's completely turned off. We kind of talked about some reconstructive stuff earlier, and even that's being turned off now. So there's definitely challenges, and we have to scratch our heads and think on a daily basis, what do we do about our employees to support these people, so that we kind of try to minimize the economic impact downhill. But it's a huge problem that we need to take day by day, and everyone's suffering.
We'll be back with more of my interview right after this break. So if it impacts your business end of things, that results in a lot of healthcare professionals being unemployed, like doctors and nurses and all the people that are ancillary support to your business.
Yeah, so we're all trying to get creative to find ways and reasons to keep people on staff. So most of us are trying to conduct as much of our practice we can virtually, like we're interacting right now. So that's one possibility. What we started doing before the COVID situation started getting a little more serious down here in Miami is we were offering in-home concierge type services, where I do some of the signature procedures, and also just segmenting and spacing apart patients in the practice. And that will hopefully resume at some point, depending on, we have to kind of gauge on a continual basis what's going on with our healthcare delivery system. And all of these decisions are going to be based on the wave. We're going to get overwhelmed. We don't know by how much.
When you say overwhelmed, in which way, Doc?
Hospitals, hospital beds, and most importantly, ventilators. So the things that plastic surgeons and a lot of docs are banding together right now, the ASPS, our society, has started a registry. I'm participating. I put my own ventilator as available if we need to make makeshift hospitals. So my ventilator and my supplies for surgery and surgical care, while they're sitting here, while I cannot practice, they may be mobilized to a makeshift military hospital, if we set up a hospital and a hotel, to at least preserve one more life in this situation. But we anticipate not having enough ventilators and medical supplies for the sick patients. Now, at some point, that will even off, and when it does, then we can start thinking about how do we slowly start re-engaging our normal practices and getting back to business. It won't be as usual for the rest of the year. COVID's not going to go away in a week or 2 weeks or 2 months. We're going to be dealing with it for at least this year. The issue we're focused on is, what does that bell curve look like, and how do we flatten it so that people don't die unnecessarily, and so that we can maintain our healthcare infrastructure. And that's where everyone's focused right now, and that's why we can't perform most of our services.
That is quite a challenge that all of us have to face as Americans. And Doc, we appreciate your insights and your perspective on this. And obviously, like all Americans, we're all trying to pull together. We can get through this, but it does take each and every one of us to understand that there will be sacrifices that we will have to make to be sure, like socially distancing ourselves to mitigate this virus. And at the same time, as we try to flatten that curve, keep reaching out to each other to keep each other informed. So we thank you for joining me today on the Kelly Wright Show to inform people about this wonderful practice that you have, plastic surgery, and how vital it is to so many patients. And yet, right now, it appears that has been quite disrupted.
Absolutely. We can only hope that the situation comes under control, and then we're going to have to also wait for our societal expectations to adjust, for people to for governmental bodies, regulatory bodies, the data to come in, and all of us to readjust where we think it is acceptable to start thinking about ourselves and our beauty and elective things like that as well.
Yeah, it's quite good that you ended on that note, because we do think about that, but those are things that are going to be secondary for a moment. Let's think about each other's health and well-being. And Dr. Ryan Mariska, thank you so much, and continue on to keep helping people, especially providing the ventilators. It's so important right now. Appreciate you being on the show today, sir.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right. So joining me now on the program is my wife, Loretta Wright, and she is a teacher. Thanks for being on the program.
Certainly.
So I was explaining to each and every one of you, you've probably seen the video by now, my wife actually teaching from home. And so this new COVID-19 pandemic has us in a new normal. And it's quite abnormal for teachers because you're having to do a lot of distance education now. For our viewers, how do you find life moving forward to educate our children?
Right now, I think because I'm a preschool teacher, I find it difficult for the children to concentrate because they have mom and dad there. They have other distractions. But I have seen children being able to accomplish the goals that have been set forth for them for this period.
How important is it to keep our children educated?
They have to remain on a routine, regardless if they're in the classroom or they're at home. Routine is the key element to this whole thing for them. They're not going to understand what is happening, but if you're on that routine, they'll be fine.
And you know, furthermore, Loretta, one of the things I find is that educators, particularly reaching out to people through technology, they're trying to reach all students. We were talking just yesterday about reaching out to African American students because we were concerned that enough of them are not technically prepared in terms of having laptops at their disposal. But here in our area, we've noticed, or you were explaining to me, that the school systems are actually providing laptops to all communities, particularly urban communities where they might not have access to it.
Right. As far as I know, our county in Maryland is very much on board with providing children with laptops and any educational tools that they would need. They have set up schedules that are announced on emails and texts on the television. So children that are in public school at least should be able to take advantage of these tools that are being offered.
So for those of you watching, I'm talking to my wife, Loretta Wright, who is a early childhood education teacher. And at one point you were actually an administrator, director. So we're looking at this whole scenario of COVID-19 pandemic, and how does it affect teachers that you've spoken to through all stratas, all grade levels?
It's difficult not knowing when we'll return to the classroom. But again, in my case, dealing with younger kids, and I'm sure even the older kids, just knowing that we have that contact over the computer, we can see each other, that really helps. Many parents have said thank you just for, listening to their kids, whatever's going on in their day.
And you know, when I saw you, I was actually heartened and encouraged by seeing you hard at work, reading, which reading, of course, is fundamental, but I was just very encouraged by that and inspired by that. So that's why I wanted to bring you on the program to at least share with viewers that no matter what you're going through, if you have a young child and if you have children who are in high school, keep them active, keep them involved in their education, because education is the gateway out of everything that's bad and leads to something that's good. So Loretta Wright, thanks for joining me on the Kelly Wright Show.
You're welcome.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Keep on teaching and keep on reaching our youth. Back with more of the show after this. Welcome back. And now for my final word. As we continue to watch the developments of this deadly disease that is spreading throughout the country and around the world, we understand that this global pandemic can bring us all together to unite ourselves in fighting this. Governor Andrew Cuomo out of New York stated this: "This situation is the same situation for everyone, for everyone." And he was stating that on the heels of his brother, Chris Cuomo, news host and anchor at CNN, who has now tested positive with COVID-19, yet continues to produce his show from the basement of his home. That is a stark reminder of how valuable life is and how inspirational and aspirational we can be to overcome against all odds. I hope you've watched the show today, and as a result of that, you've been righted and ignited and united to keep spreading not fear, but love, freedom, and peace. Speaking of that, here's a look at a video that I had the good fortune of making called The Love Train. A better time is coming. Peace out.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is your friendly conductor. Welcome aboard the Love Train. All aboard, y'all. Well, come on. All aboard. Let me break it down for you like that. The rhythm of love is easy to find if you're listening. The color of light isn't brown, black, or white, but it's crimson. We all bleed the same. If you don't feel the groove, it's alright. If you don't feel the groove, it's alright. You'll find it. Give a little time, y'all. All aboard, y'all. Mankind won't survive if our hearts beat inside a hateful rhythm. You see, love isn't bought, but comes with a price of forgiveness. And we all bleed the same. If you don't feel the groove, it's if you're not with it, give it time, give it time. Just come along. The love train. That means you. We're all united on the love train. Get on board. All creeds and colors, all sisters and brothers on the love train. Join me on the love train. Everyone's invited.